Picture this. You're standing on a hilltop in west central Minnesota, surrounded by a sea of orange and gold maples, with clear blue lakes shimmering in the valleys below in every direction. No mountains, no coastline, just the ancient work of glaciers that scraped and shaped this land into something that stops people in their tracks. That's Maplewood State Park, and it's unlike anywhere else in the state. Welcome to Minnesota Explorer, a podcast dedicated to bringing you a new adventure somewhere in Minnesota with every episode. Each week we'll travel to a different destination, from scenic state parks and beautiful lakes to fascinating cities, historic landmarks, and hidden gems tucked away across this incredible state. If you're gearing up for your own trip, head over to northstartravelers.com, where you'll find gear recommendations to help you travel smarter, plus a full list of our other podcast shows covering destinations around the world. If you love discovering new places and planning your next adventure, follow the podcast so you never miss an episode. And if you're enjoying the show, leaving a positive review goes a long way in helping others find it. Now let's explore Minnesota. Maplewood State Park sits in Otter Tail County in west central Minnesota, about 3.5 hours northwest of the Twin Cities, tucked into a landscape that surprises nearly everyone who visits for the first time. Out here, the land is largely flat farmland, open fields stretching to the horizon in every direction. And then, as you approach the park, the earth rises. Hills appear, and not just gentle rises, but real, rolling, forested ridges with lakes nestled deep in the valleys between them. It doesn't look like the Minnesota most people expect. The reason is geology, specifically the work of glaciers that covered this region during the last ice age. Maplewood sits on a series of hills that are part of the Alexandria Glacial Moraine, a massive ridge of debris pushed and deposited by a glacier as it advanced and retreated over thousands of years. The highest points in the park approach 1,600 feet in elevation, and the terrain drops as much as 300 feet in less than a mile in places. The lakes, including South Lida Lake, which is the park's largest, were carved when ice buried itself in valley floors and slowly melted, leaving behind those deep, clear basins. The landscape you're looking at today was shaped roughly 20,000 years ago, and it has barely changed. These hills have been known by different names over the centuries. Old maps and historical records refer to them as the Maple Leaf Mountains, a name that gives you a sense of how dramatic they looked to early European settlers arriving across the open plains. Today, most people simply call them the Leaf Mountains or the Leaf Hills. Long before any European settlers arrived, humans were living in and around this landscape. Archaeologists have found evidence of habitation going back at least 6,000 years. The park contains a significant pre-contact archaeological site, known as the Maplewood Site, that was occupied during two separate periods, roughly 650 to 900 CE, and again from about 1450 to 1650 CE. The artifacts discovered here represent both prairie and woodland cultures, which makes sense given the park's location. It sits right at the transition zone between the western prairies and the eastern hardwood forests. The people who lived here were primarily hunters, and they had access to the full range of plants and animals from both ecosystems. That site is now listed on the National Register of Historic Places. Modern settlement didn't begin until the 1880s, when land surveys opened the area to homesteaders. By 1900, the townships of Lida and Maplewood had a combined population of over 1,000 people, farmers mostly trying to work the same rolling hills that today we protect as a park. As it turned out, the land wasn't well suited to agriculture. The slopes were too steep, the terrain too uneven. A study commissioned in the mid-20th century concluded what the landscape had probably been suggesting for decades. This hilly, lake-dotted terrain was better suited to recreation than to farming. The push to create a park here actually dates back to 1923, when the idea was first proposed in the Minnesota legislature. It took 4 more decades, and the work of a dedicated local organization called the Maplewood State Park Association to finally make it happen. In 1963, the Minnesota legislature officially established Maplewood State Park, protecting more than 9,000 acres of hills, lakes, forests, and wetlands for future generations. So here you are. You've pulled in through the park entrance on the north side, and right away, even before you reach the park office, the drive itself is telling you something. The road winds through open patches of prairie grass and wildflowers, and if you're coming at dawn or dusk, slow down. White-tailed deer graze right along the roadside here, often in groups, barely bothered by passing cars. Bald eagles have been spotted hunting along the ridgelines. The park is home to more than 150 bird species and 50 species of mammals, and a good number of them are not shy. Your first stop worth a deliberate pause is the Trail Center, positioned just south of the park office on the north shore of Cataract Lake. It's a modest wooden building on a platform with picnic tables right outside and trailheads launching in multiple directions from the door. This is the starting point for the Hiking Club Trail, the main connector through the park, and a great place to get your bearings before heading deeper in. Pick up a trail map here if you didn't grab one at the entrance station. The staff are helpful and genuinely knowledgeable about current trail conditions. Don't skip this stop if it's your first visit. When you're ready to move, the most rewarding single hike in the park is the climb to Hallaway Hill. The trail is about a 1.5 mile round trip, and it gains elevation steadily as it winds through hardwood forest, basswood, oak, and the sugar maples the park is named for. At the top, there's a bench and an interpretive sign, and from here you can see South Lida Lake spread out below you, its blue surface framed by forested ridges on all sides. On a clear fall morning, when the maples are turning, this view is genuinely striking. What most visitors miss, the overlook faces west and slightly south, which means it catches the light beautifully in the late afternoon. If you have any flexibility in your schedule, try to reach the top in the hour before sunset. From Hallaway Hill, the trail leads back down toward the Lida Lake area, and South Lida Lake is where you'll find the park's main beach. It's a legitimate sandy beach, guarded during the summer season, with a picnic area spread across a hilly peninsula jutting into the lake. Canoes and kayaks are available to rent right here at the lake, and it's worth getting out on the water even for an hour. From the water, looking back at the forested hillsides rising around the lake, the scale of the landscape becomes clear in a way it doesn't quite register on land. Lake Lida, the largest lake within the park, also has a drive-in boat landing if you've brought your own boat. Anglers target walleye and northern pike here. For panfish, sunfish, and crappie, Grass Lake, adjacent to the main campground, is a consistent producer and popular with families. On the western side of the park, there's a smaller lake where walleye fishing draws a devoted crowd. And if you're after rainbow trout, Bass Lake, despite its name, is the one stocked for trout. The variety in a single park is unusual and worth knowing about before you arrive. The main campground sits on the eastern edge of Grass Lake, and it's a genuinely pleasant place to set up camp. 71 drive-in sites, many with electricity, plus 5 camper cabins if you prefer a roof overhead. 3 of those cabins are available year-round, which makes Maplewood a surprisingly good winter destination as well. The park also maintains 21 miles of snowmobile trails and 5 miles of groomed cross-country ski trails when conditions allow. And the Friends of Maplewood group hosts a candlelight ski and snowshoe evening a few times each winter around Cataract Lake. One of those quiet, memorable events that doesn't make it onto most people's radar? One stop that many visitors drive right past is the Maplewood Church, which stands on a grassy knoll in the southern section of the park. It's a small, simple white structure, the kind of rural church that was once the center of community life in townships across this part of Minnesota. The church is a tangible connection to the homesteading era, to the families who tried to farm these hills in the late 1800s. It doesn't take long to see, but it adds a layer of human history to the park that's easy to miss if you're focused entirely on the trails and the water. For anyone who arrives on horseback or just wants to understand the full scale of what this park offers, the equestrian trail system is remarkable. 20 miles of horse trails loop through the park, crossing ridge lines and dropping into valleys that have changed very little since before European settlement. Hikers are welcome on these trails as well. 24 horse camping sites are available near the equestrian campground, making Maplewood one of the premier horseback riding destinations in the state park system. One more thing worth knowing, the North Country National Scenic Trail, a 4,600-mile footpath connecting North Dakota to New York, passes directly through Maplewood State Park. Most people don't realize that when they're hiking the park trails, they're walking a section of one of the longest hiking trails in the country. It's a small thing, but it puts this corner of Otter Tail County in interesting company. What makes Maplewood genuinely special isn't any single thing. It's the combination of elements that you don't expect to find together out here on the western Minnesota plains. The dramatic glacial topography, 8 lakes within a single park boundary, each with its own character and fishery. A trail system that genuinely rewards exploration on foot, on horseback, and on skis. And the fall color? When those sugar maples turn, this park becomes one of the most visually striking places in the state. It's larger, wilder, and more varied than most people anticipate. And that surprise tends to be the thing visitors mention most when they get back home. Before you leave the area, Otter Tail County has a few more destinations that pair well with a Maplewood trip. Inspiration Peak is a state wayside about 15 miles away. A short but rewarding hike to one of the highest points in Otter Tail County, rising about 400 feet above the surrounding countryside to an elevation of 1,726 feet. The view from the top is a wide, rolling panorama of lakes and farmland, and the trail from the parking lot to the summit is less than a mile. It's a quick stop that's well worth the short drive. Glendalough State Park near the town of Battle Lake is another excellent option for those spending more than a day in the area. It's a quieter, more intimate park built around a historic hunting lodge from 1905. The fishing on Annie Battle Lake is exceptional, managed under special experimental regulations designed to give anglers the kind of experience that was common a century ago. Canoe and kayak rentals are available. For a taste of local history, Phelps Mill County Park is worth a visit. The park preserves a historic flour mill originally built in 1889, a beautiful stone structure set beside a small dam on the Otter Tail River. A summer festival is held here each year, and the setting is genuinely lovely. For food after a day in the park, head into Pelican Rapids. Taqueria Chavez has built a devoted following, authentic Mexican food that draws people from well outside the area, with the barbacoa tacos and fajitas getting consistent praise. For something more classic, Big John's Pelican Pizza is a local staple for those who want a casual, satisfying meal after a long day on the trails. That brings us to the end of today's episode. Before you go, a few quick things. Subscribe so you never miss a destination, leave us a positive review to help others find the show, and share this episode with someone who loves exploring Minnesota. And if you're hungry for more adventures beyond Minnesota, visit northstartravelers.com to explore our other podcast shows and browse gear recommendations for wherever your next journey takes you. Your support means the world and keeps these adventures coming. Thanks for joining us, and happy trails.